local facility to train members of the primary reserve force who had at the time limited to no training in John's area of expertise. I can honestly say that the response from my troops was overwhelmingly positive. John's instructional technique, approach, drills, trade secrets, and experience he has developed over his number of years of service, coupled with his special forces training, proved to be a no BS, brutally effective hand-to-hand fighting system that I had not been exposed to in my 25 plus years as a non-commissioned member in the combat arms. To this day, I have troops asking me, when is John coming back to kick our ass? For anyone wishing to learn effective hand-to-hand combat in a short period of time, John's Combat Fighter is the only system I would recommend. And although this system took years to perfect, it literally only takes me hours to show it to any man with the will to learn. I promise I can make you a very, very capable fighter using these step-by-step techniques over a single weekend if you apply yourself. For example, you'll quickly master the centerline strike, as instinctive as a knee-jerk when the doc tests your reflexes, that will stun or even knock your opponent out instantly so you can quickly retreat. Be careful though, because if you don't do this the way I teach you, it can actually cause death. The unorthodox blitz blast that has a devastating flurry designed to overwhelm your opponent in nanoseconds. The force hijack method that taps into your body's reflexes to deflect and harness your attacker's force against him. The surgical strike methods like underhand ocular control that immediately overwhelm your attacker through massive neurological disruption no matter how disciplined they are. These are especially effective against a stronger opponent because they require very little strength. The one and done principle that makes winning a fight simple and virtually unavoidable by removing all the complex techniques most combat instructors try to teach their students. Instead, I teach you how to instantly recognize your opponent's one most vulnerable target and react with a single instinctive and overwhelming response. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I barely have time to tell you about the tipping point principle that allows you to instinctively know when it's time to shift from defense to attack. Or the third eye, situational awareness techniques that turns you into a virtual Jedi who can subconsciously sense subtle cues that improve your ability to recognize and capitalize on openings left by your opponents. And much, much more. All the stuff that actually works, because it has been tested in the trenches time after time. Remember how I told you I forced myself to get in over 600 fights in order to forge a fighting method that actually works in real life? Well, before joining the military, I got myself a job as a bouncer in the toughest, seediest bar in my town. A place where I was pretty much guaranteed to put my skills to the test at least once every shift. I forced myself to keep working that job until my pre-fight nerves just disappeared. Once my legs stopped shaking every time I anticipated the start of another fight, I knew I could finally move on. And that was just the first proving ground for the skills that are now the foundation for my fighting system. You see, no matter how many fancy skills I tested out, it always came down to a handful of simple, almost instinctive techniques that guaranteed victory every time. The fancy stuff almost always ended up with me nursing a bloody nose, or worse, the shame of me getting saved by one of my fellow bouncers. So only the most brutal, effective, and simple techniques survive those testing grounds. One of my favorites is the D-strike method. So simple, yet it saved my life in Kabul's holy fuck circle, which I'll tell you about in a minute. First, I have a question for you. Can you feel that? Your heart beating? The dryness in your mouth? That incredible desire to know this, to be able to do this stuff, to have this power, to possess this incredible confidence, to have control over your life in a way you never have before. Let me ask you, how much is it worth to you to never feel afraid of violence again for the rest of your life? How much is it worth to you to have your friends jealous of the amazing fearlessness that comes from the skills you've mastered, begging you to teach them your secrets? How much is it worth to never feel like you have to cower or hide from a bully again? Imagine that for a second. Really let yourself feel what that would be like. And then tell me, what do you think would be a fair price to know with certainty that you can protect yourself and your loved ones and gain absolute control over bullies and criminals who intend you harm? If you're being completely honest with yourself, I bet you'd say $197 or more would be totally fair to feel that kind of confidence. To know you have the power to make someone pay for threatening you, without ever spending years in a dojo learning forms and katas. Heck, I bet you'd think that was cheap to never have to feel scared or cowardly again for the rest of your life. I mean, $197 is a lot of money, but considering how this will change your life forever and finally give you complete self-assurance so you can spend your time living your life instead of looking over your shoulder and wondering what you could do if someone threatened your loved ones? Well, when you look at it that way, it seems pretty affordable, doesn't it? Yet, after more than 20 years in the military, doing whatever I can to serve and protect my fellow man, there's one undeniable fact I've learned again and again. That even when you want something so much and know it's a once-in-a-lifetime deal, as a man who spent so much of your time protecting and giving to others, sometimes it feels impossible to be selfish and give yourself what you so desperately need, which is why I'm going to do something kind of risky here. Not a risk to you, but a big risk to me. See, my mission in life is to help guys like you put bullies and criminals in their place, even if it means revealing this system to civilian men around the world at a great risk to myself. I realize now that this is the path I started down on that fateful night so long ago when I made the decision to learn to protect myself and the innocent folks around me. And if I have to risk everything to help you do the same, well, that's a price I'm extremely happy to pay. So here's what I'm going to do. We've already agreed that the combat fighter system is worth at least $197. But because you've watched this video and given me some of your precious time, I'm not going to ask you to invest $197. I'm not even going to ask you to pay $97, even though I know you'll agree that would be a steal. No, for you, and for now, I'm going to do something a little bit crazy. For as long as this video is up, and not a moment longer, I'm going to set your price for the combat fighter system at just one single payment of $77. And if you act right now, I'll take money out of my own pocket and give you a whopping 60% off, which means if you simply click the button below this video right now, you'll get the complete combat fighter system for the severely discounted price of just $37.